There's a generation of young white males in the West who are lost. They're lost to everyone around them, but more importantly, they're lost to themselves. They don't know their identity, and they don't know how to function in civilization anymore because they don't recognize what's happened to civilization. And so they shut themselves away behind their bedroom doors and they never return. Unfortunately, sadly, this temporary seclusion often leads to young men taking up what I will describe as a way of life. Now, what I will describe is actually labelled by Western governments as NEET, not in education, employment or training. Except this misses the very core, the very point of what these young men are. These young men, the rising number, the bulk of the rising number are white. These are white young men that are shutting themselves away, and as a result, their racial identity is being eroded, and their position in a society that was once rightfully theirs, Western civilization, is being eroded. The position that was once there for them is gone. Being a NEET isn't an awful thing. I think it should be a temporary thing that lots of people need to do to enact meaningful change. I think lots of people need to occasionally step outside of the bubble of life, of the hustle and bustle of just life in general, and sit back and reflect and take time to enter this cocoon where you can think about how society should be structured, where you can think about how Western civilization should be. But a lot of people, as I say, don't use this as a temporary stepping stone. They consume themselves in a cocoon of comfort, and they never really become the butterfly of change that they need to become in order to save us all. So my message is that NEETs must rise up and reclaim what is theirs. NEETs must rise up and take back their position in society. NEETs must rise up and save us all from our eternal damnation. NEETs must rise up and save their own peoples. If that's not motivating you, if you are a NEET, or if you're someone who knows a NEET, if that's not motivating you to shake them or yourself into action, then I don't know what can. What impetus can shake you into action at this point if you are this tantric NEET who rises in the night and sleeps in the day, who doesn't know structure or time anymore because you've isolated yourself from everyone around you, that you simply look at your computer screen and you fall asleep when you're tired. Your waking hours, your waking day isn't really a day. It's isolated. It's tantric. You've entered this NEET enlightenment. You're the NEET Buddha. Except that's no way to live. You must rise up.
Not in education, employment, or training. You probably heard about NEETs long before I mentioned it here, and I'm probably late to the party on this. NEETs are very prominent in meme culture online, on Twitter, on Facebook. And there's a tragic dimension to NEETs. I am an anarcho-communist. I do care about the unemployed. I do care about, the working class. NEETs are created by austerity. It is part of this symbiosis between neoliberal capitalism and fascism. That's correct. What happens is, and this happened during the lead up to the Second World War. There is a cycle of liberal Democrats, we'll call them. I don't mean the Democratic Party of the United States necessarily, because, for example, the austerity in Britain, where this YouTuber Godwin's son is from, most of the NEETs in Britain were created by a brutal austerity campaign that I believe was started under Gordon Brown. You could include the privatization era of Tony Blair, because there is something to that. But the brutal economic collapse campaign of austerity against the British working class and middle class started right around, it peaked with David Cameron, and just kind of has remained static under Theresa May. But what happens is Thatcherism as an economic policy, and its American cousin Reaganomics, this kind of like neoliberal capitalism, basically, when you take money out of an economy, out of a mixed economy, when you pull state funds out of the economy, especially like in terms of healthcare, what you do is create a contraction. Contractions create mass unemployment. What you have here are people who have been disaffected by capitalism. They were supposed to go into a job. They are supposed to, society owes you things for participating in society, for you not being, a savage. And I don't mean that in terms of, indigenous people. I just mean in terms of, part of being civilized is the social compact. So you participate in society, you contribute to society, you get something back. So what do I mean by savage? I mean like in the literal sense of like, why don't people go full Mad Max and burn the place down and plunder and pillage? Because there's a social compact. You contribute to society, and society gives back to you. And unfortunately, the NEETs are the youngish unemployed, who during the last round of austerity in Europe, this includes Britain, this includes Greece, this includes Spain. This last round of austerity in Europe really kicked the shit out of young people, because a lot of school funding, for example, was slashed. So public universities aren't there for these people to go and get an education and get skills and segue into a good paying job. And what was left behind are menial jobs, and three unemployed people for one menial job. So you have a group of people who are underemployed, you have a group of people who are unemployed, and you have sort of a group of people who are unemployed in the extreme. Like, the thing about being a NEET is like you're super dispossessed of identity. You're a person who has been set adrift in society. You have been robbed of any sort of sense of productivity. And this can lead to a lot of misery and despair and hopelessness and a feeling of abandonment and a desire for identity. Who am I? Give me something to do. And into this void of pain floats proselytizers of different types. You'll see ISIS recruiters exploit Western Muslim kids who are disaffected like this and go, kid, I got something for you to do. And so they recruit these kids, these young British Muslim kids, these young American Muslim kids. And then again, it's a very small number, particularly in Britain. These kids who feel like they've been put out by society. In the economic sense and in the identity sense. And they say, you don't have a job, so you're not a worker. You don't have school, so you're not a student. And I'm gonna tell you who you are. I'm gonna let you know who you can be, and I'm gonna give you a sense of legacy, and I'm gonna give you a sense of, Chris Hedges, the author, the American author who spoke back to the Bush administration and spoke back to the Obama administration. Wrote a book called War. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember entirely off the top of my head. War is a force that gives us meaning. And to me, that's what the groups like the alt-right and ISIS do when they find disaffected people. They go, you're already a soldier in an endless war that has been fought and in cosmic terms, especially when they present it through like Odinism or Christianity or Islam. You're in a fucking cosmic. And again, it gives a person who was so deprived of any sense of pride or self-actualization like this extreme boost. It reminds me of like a medical story that I saw on YouTube about a lady who had been starving for a long time, homeless, and she found these sugar cookies, and she hadn't been eating for months. Like, she was very, very badly malnourished. Then she starts eating the cookies because she's been deprived of food so long that when she starts eating, she puts herself into diabetic shock. So you go to a NEET, a person who has been set adrift, and you bring them in and you hug them and you love bomb them the way that cults do. And I do process the alt-right as a cult. I would put them with very extreme forms of religion, that sort of Scientology, extreme fundamentalist Islam, extreme fundamentalist Christian identity groups. So, they do the same things that every cult in history, large and small, has ever done. They tell you that you're special and you don't have to do anything. You are born special because you are already part of our group. You were already chosen. There's a lot of predetermination. You were chosen since the beginning of time to be Christian, jihadi, a white knight, a crusader for the white race. Your fucking offspring are, you're saving humanity by doing like this really basic thing that like even like the most basic life forms can do. Like the kind of the narrative that a lot of these cults, especially the alt-right, build around something as simple as fucking and breeding. It's like, I'm not degrading, the reproductive process, but I mean, it's not different from other physical processes. It's not like you're doing anything exceptional. You know what I mean? So you're safe. Imagine you don't know who you are. You were raised in a neoliberal capitalism where the only real identity you are given is consumer. Consume. You are what you take in. You are what you purchase. But you are not part of anything. You're just a machine eating content. You know what I mean? So again, it's capitalism sets them up. Fascism knocks them down. And you end up with people that I deeply sympathize with, which is people who are potential workers, potential comrades, thrown aside, disaffected, and fucked over by capitalism, and then manipulated by mongers like this fucking Godwinson guy who says, "Today's your lucky day because I got a purpose for you," and it just happens to be that you're going to save your race from extinction. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that coming to your front door after a moment of, after a long period of deep despair that shows up at your front door? And I'm not saying that we should excuse people who go into white nationalism. We shouldn't go, oh well, you got to understand. You got to understand that these people didn't have a choice, or these, I'm not saying that it's justified, but I am saying that the proselytizers, the recruiters like this Godwinson guy, are always prey on a very specific type of person. So if we really, as a society, want to stem these nationalist movements, these terrorist movements, we need to give people a place in the existing order. We need to give workers a place. It's a two-step process, and the first step is to confront the victims of capitalism.